Well, I think it's really important to focus on women, and concussions because I think they're more vulnerable to getting concussions than men do because of their physiology. And I think that looking at diagnosis and treatment specifically for women is very important. Just like as we do for kids or adults, we need to separate gender. And in the work that I'm doing with funding with the military on eye tracking in normative population, women have a different normal than men do. So if you're looking at eye tracking, you got to see what your gender is, and then you go into a different comparative group than with men. Yeah. I knew that the neck was producing the concussion. So it's a neck movement that's producing this whiplash in the front part of the brain. And it was after seeing statistics on women having higher rates that it really reinforced the fact that the neck is really producing it. So if you look at flexibility of the head on the neck, women have a lot more flexibility than men do. So you can imagine like you're shaking something and one thing is stiff, there's very little movement of the head, the neck is stiff, men with big necks. And then women have narrow necks and big brains, the way I like to look at it. And so the head moves a lot faster and you get a lot more shearing and rotation in the front part of the brain in women. So I think as far as the pathophysiology, what happening after concussion, I think women are more vulnerable than men are. It wasn't until we were looking at eye tracking, the military funded said we think eye tracking is a really great tool for screening for concussion and possibly diagnosis. And so they said do 10,000 people, and we did 10,000, which almost half were women, and we looked at education, race, and gender, and we found the one thing that stood out was gender. Gender was really different. So women had different eye tracking than men did and had different norms, and that's when I got really interested in it. Yeah. I think it's helpful if you know that you're about to get hit and you tense your muscles up. And if you got big muscles, you can tense up more. So I think in those situations it's great. Like you're going to hit a ball and you've got a really nice thick neck and your head doesn't move very much when you hit the ball. But a lot of these things happen out of the blue. I mean, you don't know the ball's coming or you're about to hit somebody and it's unexpected. And when it's unexpected, you don't tense up your neck muscles. So I don't know if it's really going to work. At the end of the day, we need to have some kind of device that reduces the neck motion, and that'll be the cure. So the main thing is that concussion's undefined, that there's no accepted concussion diagnostic criteria. So right now we're using symptoms. So if you get a hit to the head and have a headache, you have a mild traumatic brain injury or concussion. Most doctors would do that. They may say you need a couple more symptoms. If it lasts a few more days, they might throw in some sleep issues. But every doctor has got their own way of making the diagnosis. So I think we should recognize that, and I would step away and say, well, what are the main things you really want to know about the person after force to the head? Especially an athlete that's going to go back into a contact sport. You want to make sure that they can pay attention, and you want to make sure that they have good balance. And so we did a study of all the literature in concussion, the Brain Trauma Foundation, and found that attention and balance were the two prevalent things that were affected after a force to the head. So we should be measuring attention and balance. And so the question is, how do you measure it? How can you do it quickly? How can you do it reliably? And so for attention, we've been using eye tracking. So eye tracking is, what you're looking at is what you're paying attention to. It's a question of what the metrics are. And so it's a 30-second test. You watch a dog going around a circle. There are cameras in your eyes. You can see how well you follow it, and that's a measure of how well you pay attention. So it's the best we can get, right? So best is the best. So there are other ways of measuring balance. I mean, there's on your iPhone there's an accelerometer, and people are strapping it to your waist and seeing how much wobble you have. I think we need to have better metrics for balance and vestibular. So I'd say attention, vestibular, and balance. In fact, that's a subtype that I think we're going to be discussing in the future for concussion. That if you take the whole umbrella of concussion, anybody with a headache, about 40% of those people are actually normal cognitively and neurologically. They have a headache from a neck strain or just a focal, scalp contusion or something like that. Whereas what you really want to find out is the people that have attention and balance problems. And I'd throw into the balance thing vestibular. So So it's really about attention and balance is really orienting to the outside world. Attention is when the outside world's moving and you got to track it, that's eye tracking. The other one is you're moving and the outside world still, that's vestibular and balance. So we need better metrics for that. I think that if we had those on the sidelines, then we really separate and screen out the people that are vulnerable to injury.